Our digital world has been revolving around three A's: app, APIs, and AI. APIs are application programming interface. This is the way different digital services interact with each other, collaborate with each other, and utilize each other's services. Can you guess which A among these three A is the oldest one and which A is the newest one? If you said app are the newest one, you are right. App are relatively new. If you said AI is the oldest one, you may be right, because AI and APIs are pretty old. But I will contradict myself between AI and API as we talk further, because especially for AI, it depends how you see, how you interpret it. But before that, let me give a real world example. My best friend in London is Ashok. He lives around 30 minutes drive from my place. Let's say I want to visit Ashok. I want to go from my place to Ashok's place. For that, my digital journey will start by taking out my smartphone from my pocket and then look for an app which can help me go from my place to Ashok's place. Let's say Uber. I look for the Uber icon on my smartphone and I press on the Uber icon. The Uber app appears. This is where the first A, apps, comes into the picture. Then Uber will expect me to enter Ashok's address, and I'll do that. After that, Uber app or the Uber as a digital service needs mapping. Find out the route from my place to Ashok's place. Find out the distance to find out if there are any traffic conditions that Uber needs to be aware of. Yes, Uber can do mapping themselves as well, but why would they do? That's not their core service. That's not their core business. So Uber then decides to collaborate with some mapping service provider, Google Maps. Uber then utilizes Google Maps mapping service, and Uber uses the service from Google Maps using the Google Map APIs. This is where the second A comes into the picture, APIs. And then Uber needs to tell me how much it's going to cost, including those strange surge pricing. For that, Uber apps or the Uber digital service will use AI. Let me warn you, AI is one of the most overloaded terms that we use, because the AI which I am talking about here for Uber is very different to the AI that we see these days. AI in the case of Uber is predictive AI. That's the AI that has been there for very long. Here, Uber will use AI, or rather predictive AI, to predict the cost or price that Uber will tell me. This is where Uber as a digital service revolves around these three A's: apps, APIs, and AI. Let's zoom into these three A's. Let's start with apps. Apps are interesting, isn't it? There are apps for everything. All our life, including our organic life, almost uses one or more apps on a regular basis. The first app I remember was Snakes, which was released in 1997 by Nokia. That was a singular app, which means that it was not part of an app store, and that became viral. Before that as well, there has been apps on PDAs or personal digital assistants like calculators, calendars, etc. And for mobiles, the first viral app was Snakes in 1997. And then in 2003, I remember one of the first app store came up. It was called Fandango. It was primarily for the Sony Ericsson P800s and P900, but it was not very popular because it was for those specific mobile phones only. Then in 2006, Nokia came up with the Nokia catalog for the Symbian smartphones. And then in 2008, the significant event happened. Yes, it was the Apple App Store, primarily for iPhone to start with, but then got extended to all sorts of iOS devices. And that accelerated the app journey. Many apps came up for almost everything that we do. I remember in 2010, the word of the year was apps or application. I remember in 2003, 2004, I was in Vodafone in the UK, and the 3G revolution was just starting. The apps and app stores were getting discussed. This is pre-iPhone, pre-Apple App Store. So the applications were very different. The concept of applications were very different. And there was a leadership workshop, and we all were asked to come up with some ideas on what do we want from our app? What do we want our apps to do? And we were given those sticky post-it notes, and we were supposed to write down what do we expect from the apps. I remember I wrote down in one of the sticky post-it notes as, I want my app to make coffee. And then I put that sticky note on the whiteboard, and we all were then reading around what everyone else has written. And everyone read my post-it note, and then they laughed. I laughed as well. It was almost like a joke, isn't it? 10 years from that time, in around 2013, I was with GSMA. I joined it, and then I went to the coffee place. There is no coffee machine. There is a tablet sitting on a table. You press an icon and it makes you coffee. So you be careful what you wish for. That's apps. Now let's go to the next A, APIs. APIs are pretty old as well, and it has gone through a journey. API, or the API specifications, were actually created even before the term API, Application Programming Interface, was coined. During 1940, two of the British researchers at the University of Cambridge, Morris and David, were working on an initial computer called EDSAC, and they were creating programs. At that time, these were called subroutines, so that they can, do certain tasks on those computers. And interestingly, those subroutines or programs were actually written on punch tapes during those days. And Morris and David needed to document how those programs or subroutines work, so they were creating notes for that. Those notes became the first API specification. And Morris and David actually wrote a very interesting book about that. So in 1940, the first API specification was created, even before the term API was coined. The term API was coined in 1974 by the database fame, Relational Database Management System, RDBMS fame, CJ Date. When I was doing my computers, CJ Date used to be my hero because his book on RDBMS was phenomenal. So anyways, that's where the API's journey started pretty early, in around 1940. And you can claim 1974 as well. And I remember one stats from Akamai in 2019, what Akamai reported, that 83% of the entire traffic on the internet are actually API traffic. Phenomenal, isn't it? That's not surprising, because all the acceleration that we see in our digital life, in our digital journeys, is due to collaboration between different digital services. And that's why Akamai reported 83% of the internet traffic is actually APIs. As the example I gave, where Uber collaborates with Google Maps to get the map. Now let's talk about the third and most interesting AI. AI is not new, as we talked about. AI is pretty old. Even the term AI, artificial intelligence, was introduced by John McCarthy in 1955-56 in the very famous Dartmouth workshop. I actually used AI first in 1999, and it was a very different AI. So my work was to extract out information from handwritten legal documents using AI, and I have to say I failed miserably. Some obvious reasons: there was not enough compute, or I have to say that actually in 1999 the first GPU from NVIDIA were launched, right? I'm sure you know that many of the acceleration, many of the advancement that we see right now on AI, including all the large language models, etc., are fueled by compute from GPUs, mostly by NVIDIA. So anyways, in 1999, the first GPU, GeForce 256, was launched by NVIDIA, but that was primarily for video games. And at that time, I was not even aware of these GPUs. Anyways, I failed miserably, but I kept doing some AI work along the time, and now we have the phenomenal acceleration that has happened in AI. Anyways, let's come back to AI. Many of the acceleration that we see now were triggered by some significant event and some work. Geoffrey Hinton and his students at the University of Toronto, and Geoffrey Hinton introduced backpropagation as one of the most prominent algorithm for the AI model. It was not invented by Geoffrey Hinton, but he used it more prominently, and that was 2012. He started to use it even before that, but in 2012 it became very, very prominent. But backpropagation is actually an implementation of something called chain rule, and chain rule was created or introduced to the world by the German mathematician, polymath, a brilliant person called Leibniz, and he introduced it in 1676. And that's why I was saying that I'll contradict myself, right? So AI, the term was introduced in 1955-56, but actually we can say or we can claim that AI, actually the seed of AI was planted in 1676 by Leibniz in his chain rule. Now there is another way we can look at the digital services. The digital services or the digital world has been revolving around two paradoxes, Moravec's paradox and Polanyi's paradox. Hans-Peter Moravec from Carnegie Mellon University in 1988 introduced the Moravec's paradox. What he said is very interesting. What he said is there are tasks which are very difficult for us humans, very easy for computers. And there are tasks which are very easy for us humans but very difficult for computers. Let's take a 108-digit number and we need to calculate the cube root of that. Very difficult for us humans, isn't it? But very easy for computers. Even a calculator can do it. But there are tasks like language which has been very easy and natural for us humans but very difficult for computers. Because language is ambiguous. Language needs a lot of context processing. Language needs a lot of cognitive processes that goes in our mind. Let's take a very simple statement. The ball didn't fit the bag because it was large. What was large? The ball was large, isn't it? Let's change the statement slightly. The ball didn't fit the bag because it was small. What was small? We instantly say the bag was small. So you see, to process this very simplistic language-based statement, there is a lot of process that goes in our mind. Concept of space, concept of size, interpreting any ambiguity in there, right? So that's why it has been very difficult for computers or machines to process language. Then let's talk about the other paradox, Polanyi's paradox. Michael Polanyi, in his book The Tacit Dimension, mentioned something like, we know more than what we can express. It's a very interesting statement because most of the problems that we solve, let's say a programmer writes a program, an AI scientist or an AI researcher creates a model. First you solve the problem in your head, then you encode it in a program or anything such. But what Polanyi said is we actually know more than what we can express because, again, language. Any language-based thinking, any language-based cognitive process, we cannot express that easily. So both Moravec and Polanyi were actually talking about language. Language has been a big barrier between us humans and our digital life, digital world and the digital services, because the digital services do not understand or did not understand our natural language, and same way we humans did not understand the language spoken by the digital service. But then a significant event happened almost 3 years from now. Yes, it's the ChatGPT phenomena. Although the phenomena didn't just happen 3 years back on its own with the ChatGPT phenomena. This thing started with the phenomenal paper aptly titled as Attention is All You Need, that introduced something called the transformer architecture, which then helped to accelerate all these large language models, all the acceleration we see in generative AI and yes, ChatGPT as well. I mentioned generative AI. So you see how AI then evolved from predictive AI, which I was talking about earlier, which Uber used, as I explained in that real world example, now to generative AI. And that was a very, very interesting shift because in predictive AI, the purpose was more prediction. You give two images, one of a cat, one of a dog, and you ask AI to predict which one is a cat, which one is a dog. In generative AI, it transformed completely. Instead of giving it an image, you ask it, you type a prompt, hey, create an image of a cat, and it generates it, right? So generative AI transformed the capabilities of these AI models, and most importantly, it removed the barrier of language between us humans and the computers and the machines. The computers and the machines started to understand our language, and in that case, that bridge was created. Then the fourth A was introduced. This is where we are living in right now. It's the agentic AI. If you take the example of, let's say, ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT doesn't do anything on their own, right? It waits from your prompt. You add a prompt as text or as voice, then it acts on it. Yes, it understands our language, and by the way, that's the first level of humanization of AI that we see. Right? The language barrier is broken between the machine, the computer, the AI, and us humans. That's humanization, because then we are speaking the same language, the same natural language. But still, it waits for our prompt. It doesn't do anything on its own. In agentic AI, it doesn't wait for the prompt. Agentic AI, the word agentic was introduced by Albert Bandura in his book, not very old, in around 1986. Agentic AI phenomena is where we are living it right now. So AI has evolved from predictive AI to generative AI, now to agentic AI. In agentic AI, these AI systems, these AI models don't wait for our prompts. They take actions on their own. They decide what to do, not based on prompts, on their own cognitive process. They're almost like a digital species which has their own mind. And if we now see how my initial real world example, my need or my requirement to go from my place to Ashok's place using the 3 A's can now transform. And that's a phenomenal transformation that we are going to see. In this agentic AI world, if I need to now go from my place to Ashok's place, I don't need to open an app. I just need to ask my AI agent, what is my intent? What do I want to do? All I need to say, hey, I want to go to Ashok in my natural language. Now, from generative AI, the language barrier has been broken anyway. So processing language is not difficult. I just share my intent. Hey, I want to go to Ashok's place. If there is some sort of ambiguity because there may be, 2 Ashoks in my, let's say, contact list, in that case, the AI agent will ask back saying, hey, do you want to go to Ashok who lives 30 minutes from your place, or you're talking about any other? Then I can talk back saying, hey, I want to go to Ashok who lives 30 minutes from my place. And then it will decide what to do, whether to call Uber or Bolt. Bolt is another service we use here in London. And also it may decide based on my preferences. For example, I am quite passionate about sustainability, and if the AI agent then sees that I have used many carbon credits for the day, it may decide that, hey, I shouldn't use Uber or Bolt, I should take the train. So you see here, these AI agents are pretty different from the generative AI or ChatGPT like model where they wait for the prompt. Here, this AI agent, which is fulfilling my intent of going from my place to my friend's place, is taking decisions on their own. And this agentic AI, you see what it is doing? It is creating a digital singularity. It is converging those 3 A's, app, APIs, and AI into one, and that's significant. Let me ask a question which may sound like an absurd question, but let me ask that. If I ask you, what is the shape of the organic world? You may have 2 answers, both are extreme. First answer could be, hey, why will the organic world have any shape? It doesn't have any shape. Or you may say, hey, it has got 3D shape, right? Now if I ask the same question for the digital world, what is the shape of the digital world? Let me answer that question. It is rectangular. And why do I say so? All our digital journey starts with a screen of your phone, screen of your laptop, screen of your computer, screen of your tablet. So our digital journey starts with a screen. So the shape of our digital world has been rectangular. But did we want that? Not at all. Because of the language barrier between the machines or computers and the digital services and us, we have been using, or we have been forced to use this screen. And this is why I say that the shape of our digital world has been a screen. But with this agentic AI, that screen is now shattered. So then we can claim that the shape of the digital world is not and will not be rectangular anymore. And whatever I am saying is not just theory and futuristic. It is happening now. It has already started to happen. In 2023 at the CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, which happened generally in January in Vegas, in 2023 CES Vegas, there were 2 devices which were introduced. The first one was called the AI pin, the AI human pin. It didn't work that well due to commercial reasons. The other one was called a Rabbit R1, and I pre-ordered it as soon as it was launched, and I have it. The experience that I talked about, where you talk through the agent to get Uber or to share your intent for going one place to other or any other intent, it is actually available on those devices. So whatever I'm talking about is not really futuristic. It's happening now. It has happened, and it will be happening more and more in the future. We will be using these AI agents instead of apps. Now, let me then do some bold and very strong predictions for these 3 A's: apps, APIs and AI. Let's start with apps. Apps will cease to exist, or rather, screen-based apps will cease to exist because of this agentic AI. Why will we need when we actually talk through the agents and then they can actually do our work? Why will we need lot many apps? All we need is something, an AI agent sitting on some device, whether it's our phone or those rabbit hour devices that we can carry in our pocket. We just talk through it. So that's my first prediction. How long we have got, how long it will take? My prediction is between 2 to 5 years, apps will start to move into this screenless world. Now let's come to APIs. APIs will have to evolve, and then it's pretty logical, right? In API, the first 2 letters stands for application and programming. I already said that application or apps will cease to exist, and then P, programming. Programming has already evolved from human written program to co-pilot written program, vibe programming. So programming has already evolved. So if the first 2 letters, application and programming, is going to reform, transform completely, in that case, how can APIs remain the same? The last letter I will remain. The interface will be needed between different digital services. So APIs will evolve into something that we will have to see. I call that evolution as cognitive interface, where the digital services will evolve into AI agents, and AI agents will interface with each other using some form of cognitive interface. What will that be? We will have to see. Some initial ideas we are already seeing, but my prediction is we will see it being transformed and reformed and evolved even further. Now the third A, AI. This is where we will see the most evolution and transformation. Let's get an example of what AI can and cannot do. Let's say if I put a small kid on a table, that kid will resist, and that kid will be a bit scared that the kid can fall, right? It will try to hold on to the table. It will try to see that there is stability in there. Why? Because the kid may fall down. Why will the kid fall down? Due to gravitational force. Where did the kid learn from that? The kid has not yet learned Newton's law of gravitation or any other books. How does the kid know? So this is where we still have some problem and some evolution is needed in AI, because all the evolution, the acceleration, the revolution that we see in AI is through encoded knowledge, which means that all the knowledge that we have in the digital space in the form of textual knowledge, knowledge in pictures, in audio, in video, all these AI models, they have learned and gone through every of those, right? But there is a lot many knowledge like what they skip and how we humans learn, how the real world works. They are not encoded, they are not written anywhere, right? So that way, and also another very important thing here is all these, let's say, large language models, these frontier models, these advanced models, they have actually consumed every possible encoded knowledge in the internet. So we are hitting a data wall, as I call it, right? There is not more data that or information that this AI model can learn, read, and interpret, because many of the other knowledge that we have as humans are not encoded, like that kid's case as I was talking about. And that's where there's a problem right now in AI, right? And let me go back to the Moravec's paradox and Polanyi's paradox as I was talking about earlier, and I was interpreting it. I think I was wrong, or my ambitions has changed. I don't think Moravec or Polanyi were actually talking about language. So there are things which are still very hard for computers and easy for us, like that kid sitting on that table and resisting to fall down or fearing for falling down, right? Similarly, there are a lot many things in our brain, lot many knowledge encoded, lot many learning in our brain which we cannot express. That's why we have never written those down, right? So Moravec's paradox and Polanyi's paradox are still intact because they were not actually talking about language. What were they talking about? They were talking about the world. So instead of language model, now we need a world model. This is where the AI needs to evolve, and this is where the prominence of humanization of AI is needed, because this is how we humans live in this world, and AI needs to evolve into that world using this world model so that we can achieve humanization of this AI. That's the future of AI, and that's physical AI. So you see, the AI has gone through a journey from predictive AI to generative AI to agentic AI. Then it moves, and it needs to move into physical AI, and more importantly, a humanized AI. And there is a very interesting proverb that I follow through. When the wind of change happens, some people try to build walls, some people try to build windmills. I prefer to build the windmills, and I'm sure many of you want to do the same. So let's build the future together, and yes, let's humanize every technology that we build. Let's humanize AI. If whatever I was talking about, the journey, the digital journey, it has resonated with you, it has given you some new thoughts, it has allowed you to think differently, it has allowed you to be hopeful for the future, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be talking a lot more about how AI is going to impact our day-to-day life, how the digital services are going to evolve, how do I see we humans fit in this new world fueled by AI. Thank you.